Today we are going to speak about analytics and esports. I'm Matias Rodriguez. I'm VP of Technology for Globant. Been working on gaming for a very long time, and we have been conducting a lot of research. So we first wanted to start talking about more old-school sports, let's say, and how they already have an infrastructure to collect, process, and showcase information. In this case, it's a very quick sample around the NBA and how that information could be used to either improve gameplay, to learn, or to do sports betting technologies and stuff like that. Something that we discover across esports, and as you can see here, thanks to our Newzoo guys and our Newzoo friends, is that esports has been growing tremendously year over year. And over that, you can see that the audience is growing, the locations are very diverse. And something that caught a lot of our attention is that most of the esports tournaments and esport content is being consumed on many different platforms, not only on TV as traditional sports, but more important around PC, laptop, mobile, and tablet, which means that people who is watching has a very interactive background. They like to not only see, but have some sort of participation of what they are looking. So I quote here our good friend from former CEO of Activision, is that game has become the biggest unofficial sports league in the world. And that means that there are tons of tournaments around the world, there is a lot of events around the world, but we are still lacking the infrastructure to really capture a lot of the behavior data, like dynamic data, and being able to process that in some way so we can either learn or publish or attract more sponsors, for instance. So for that, we will take a quick look at the current state of the art. So we have Twitch as one of the most popular platforms. So in any sports events that we can presence, we have Twitch being broadcasting, and that obviously has a very standard way of working. It has some interactive elements like game-based rewards or the famous Twitch drops. It has a very good way to monetize. It has a very good way to have chat interaction among players, but it lacks progress system for game, and it lacks a lot of detailed game analytics. It's essentially not connected, and it's just focusing on broadcasting. Even though you can see some interactive examples like Twitch Play Pokemon, most of them it's around broadcasting technology. Similarly happens with YouTube gaming, which obviously it's aligned with Google and YouTube, so it has a very strong background on that, and it has some sort of monetization included for streamers. But again, it lacks the progress system for game and no game integration, so mostly it's focused around streaming technologies and how can you spectate in a more static way. You're able to watch, but you're not able to have most of the interaction system happens through chat, so you have no way to modify how the tournament is being looked and how that tournament is being experienced. Another streaming platform, very famous, it's around Facebook Gaming. They have Facebook support, of course. They have a partnership with ESL, so they are able to broadcast some sort of the tournaments. But again, no progress system for game, no native game integration. So there is no way for these platforms to overlap a lot of dynamic information, how the encounters of some players are being conducted. You cannot even change cameras of what is happening. So a very good solution for broadcasting, but again, we are still lacking that interactive element that a lot of this young audience is expecting because they are more used to experiment around those kinds of interactions. Similar to Microsoft solution around Mixer, we have a strong Xbox integration. You have game-based rewards. You can do even in-stream purchases. So if somebody is streaming something, they are able to monetize and allow you to buy the game as you are watching. But again, no progress system for game, no native game integration. So again, means that they are very good at broadcasting technologies, but not in terms of overlays and how to superimpose more dynamic information, whether it's where the favorite loadout for teams, the most famous encounters in one single match. So if we take a look at the architecture of this game-based or esports event, We have a if we take the esports event at the middle or at the core to being able to connect the rest of the players, we have on one side the game studio with their properties. They have a game on the studio, they have a gameplay, the gameplay evolves into some meta, you have scenarios, map, characters, abilities. On the other side, you have the pro teams. They have obviously team sponsors, they are players, and they are somehow extreme users. So they really stretch the properties of the games in order to really get most of it, right? Then we have the spectators, or that they are also players, but for this reason in particular, we are just naming them spectators. And they obviously have some preference, they have some brand affinities, they have some game skills. And again, the esports events, it's a unique environment that is somehow connecting a lot of these into the same environment. We also have the brands that are trying to chime in into the esports world because they know that the younger audiences are consuming a lot of that, and they have products. So properties from the brands, they have products, they do marketing campaigns, they try to do activation of their products. So what is interesting about this is that we can start surrounding different interactions between among these different players. We have spectators and pro teams. So again, esports events like the Fortnite Summer Skirmish or the Fall Skirmish allow different spectators to play and qualify, and ultimately, once they are very good and they are getting known, pro teams can recruit them. So similar to what happens in the Summer Skirmish, where the winner of the skirmish was a very young guy of 19 years old, I think, and after that, he not only won $2,000 and $1,500, he also won a job. TSM called him and is recruiting him to start doing scrims and to start playing within their rosters. So we have a possibility for recruitment and qualifications. Obviously, advertising. All the esports team are brands as well, so they are able to connect more closely, and they are able to provide some content creation opportunities. Similarly happens between game studios and brands, where we can find in-game advertising, like when you're playing FIFA, for instance, you can see the branding around, and of course, the brands are looking more aggressively into get into game advertising because it's a more natural way of having that sponsorship opportunities. Similarly happens between pro teams and game studios. They have the opportunity now to interact and have in-game content like Rainbow Six charms. You can buy charms from different pro teams and show your support. And more important, because you buy and you have your identity tied to, in that case, Ubisoft systems, you are able to know what are their favorite teams, so you start collecting and learning more about your audience. You not only know that they like the game, but you can know that they like, for instance, Team Rogue, because they are buying the charms and supporting those teams. The same pro teams, because they stress the gameplay meta, they are able to provide that feedback to the games and the game studios, so they can tune up the properties of the game, and they can change that. Again, Rainbow Six is a very good example of how once they detect that some operators are overpowered, they nerf or buff depending on the dynamics. So that relationship between pro teams and game studio is very powerful, and it's possible because a lot of these events are happening. Also, again, among pro teams and content creators and brands, we have the opportunity to have advertising and cross-sale of branded product and sponsorship. We have, for instance, very famous streamers like Shroud having sponsorship among different brands, like coffee. Or a good example that I like to showcase here is a very well-known Twitcher guy that is called Dr. Disrespect that has a partnership with Gillette, and he was able to create a very funny song. You can look for it in Spotify. It's called Raul Gillette, and he was able to create content and essentially advertise Gillette's brand just by creating some simple interactions. And obviously, because these content creators, they have their own audiences, they are able to carry on that audience into your brands. So that's why it's very important for these esports events to have this kind of environment where a lot of these players didn't have the opportunity to play among them before. So something that we are seeing right now, and I put a couple of samples, there are more, but I just put a couple of samples of companies that are focusing on capturing data from these tournaments or even official or unofficial tournaments and provide solutions that either pro teams or different like pro teams and different players can take advantage of that learning. Most of these products are meant and target to complex games like Dota, MOBA, League of Legends, where you obviously have complex dynamics between the maps, the lanes, the champions, the collaboration among champions, the items and things that you can collect. So Shadow.gg, it's a company that provides and captures a lot of data and use big data analytics and AI to provide insights and essentially being able to learn more about these interactions and this game. Maestro, it's another company that is focusing on creating like engaging and obviously allowing to monetize. A lot of this learning about the audience is related to being able to learn more about them and to being able to be smarter to monetize. So you can target better, you can segment better your audience, and you're able to provide a better advertising model. So if you know that people, like I was naming before, Rainbow Six, and they are fans of like Team Rogue, you can send them advertising target to that particular esports team, or send brands that have affinity with that esports team in particular. So this Maestro provides a lot of engagements like raffles, like quizzes and polls, like you can see there for Rocket League, where they also start to convert these experiences into more interactive experience. You're not only watching passively, but every time that something cool is happening, they can send you a quiz, a poll, questions, and you can answer that. And there's always kind of a feedback loop around that. There is rewards, and there's things that they can give you. And then they provide, as you can see on this side of the screen, a lot of analytics for content creators, for event organizers, or for game studios, so they can essentially, again, learn more about their audience and being more smarter in ways to monetize. That also serves to solve information asymmetry for brands that want to advertise in esports events, but they don't have the backup data to showcase that maybe having a sponsorship on a big esport event like the International for Dota, it's equivalent on the reach of people that advertising on Super Bowl. Super Bowl has been on the market for a very long time as a product, and they have a lot of analytic information that they can showcase to brands like Coca-Cola, Mercedes, or other brands, and they are able to back up the reasons on why they need to advertise on that. Esports being so new in some ways, and still kind of informal in how they capture data and how they process and they showcase that, they lack that backup data. So we know that they are very good events and there are a lot of people going and attending and watching those events, but they still lack the backup data, the proof to showcase to especially non-endemic brands. That's why if you guys ever attend to any esports event, you will see that Red Bull is there, Monster is there, Intel is there, Nvidia is there. So you have strong presence on endemic brands, but really not a lot of presence for non-endemic brands. Like right now we are starting to see like Mercedes-Benz and some other brands really being more aggressive into have presence into this event. Similarly happens with products like this. This is called LOL Sumo. This is a company that provides analytics and BI process and custom guides for you to improve your gameplay. So we don't only have this system providing information for marketing purpose, but also internally you can use to improve your gameplay and to essentially get better, right? Get good, as we say in gaming. So in this case, LOL Sumo process thousands of tournaments and matches of League of Legends. They capture and they run analytics, and you can connect your own summoner, in this case for League of Legends, and they will create custom analytics. So if you play like top lane, they will start to analyze your data and showcase how can you improve into that. And again, that's based on capturing data from thousands of matches from a lot of pro players and amateur players, so they can create those sort of experiences. So something we started to explore at Globant is different approaches into how to improve these experiences. And we conducted a couple of proof of concepts among different games. Now for this one, it's based upon Rainbow Six, so something that we discover over research, and you can see if you take a look at any Counter-Strike tournament, for instance, is that you don't have control over the camera. It's a first-person shooter, so the broadcaster usually is the one who controls what you see. Now, that's very practical in one way, but you're lacking, again, a lot of information of what are the main preferences. So on this proof of concept, we play with the idea that you can actually select the player that you want to see. So ultimately, it's a better experience for consumers, but again, it gives the event organizer, the game studio, and the pro teams information about who is the most entertainment player, for instance, or who is the one that makes the most kills, or the one that makes the most tricky, or the one who plays the best loadout. And at the same time, because we are showcasing loadout and we are giving opportunity to cross-advertise, we provide, even in a single UI, an opportunity to cross-play and do a lot of things. So you can set pools, as we mentioned, quizzes, pools, and interact with other spectators. You can cross-sell different brands from, in this case, from Ubisoft. Similarly, we play with, in this case, Counter-Strike tournaments, and in this case, we've switched from web, into a mobile form factor, again, to showcase how can we have a more compelling interaction. And that's related with, again, if you guys ever go to an eSports event, you will notice that you go to the event and you can see the tournament, but if you want to see the previous team stats, you need to go to the ESL website. And then if you want to see the brackets, you need to manually Google the tournament website. And then if you want to see past encounters between those particular teams or those two particular players, you still need to start to Google and YouTube and try to find previous recordings of previous matches. So here the idea was for us to centralize a lot of that. You will see that we play around leaderboards for countries and how those could be combined. You can get notifications, you can participate again and have a more engaging experience on one side, and at the same time capturing data from your audience so you can essentially play a little bit better around those. So the last experimentation we did was with Halo in this case, and we play around VR. So this one was a little bit crazy at the beginning, although right now there are some VR solutions that allows you to stream like a tournament and for people to interact with this. So for this case, we were playing on how people will react if they have not only a possibility to look everywhere, like elsewhere, but more important, how can we make the spectating experience more interactive? So in this demo, you are able to watch a lot of information. That you have a couple of Spartans on your side, so if you watch them, we pop up some information. You can see kill to death ratio, amount of kills, loadouts, and stuff like that. But more important, because it's a VR environment, we really wanted to make it very interactive. So in this case, if your team is losing, we can shake your spaceship, we can turn it on fire. So again, you are not only spectating a tournament, but you are more like feeling it, right? So you see that, again, and VR is a very cool aspect ratio because you own most of the field of view. And you can control everything. And because it's a very immersive platform, again, we can control how interactive that element could be. And we can play around that. In this case, obviously, it's a spaceship because of Halo, but you can imagine that if it is like a FIFA tournament, we can play around like a stadium and have people cheering up or people booing, depending on how your team is doing. And again, a lot of those interactions are not only targeted to improve the spectating experience, but it's a very seamless way to capture data. If you ask your audience about your favorite players, your favorite teams, you will start to learn more about them and hopefully start to be more smart on how you advertise to them. And for the game studios, it's also important to know how the game is perceived from the spectating experience, because we know that it's a very important dynamic and system for the games to experiment. So as a big kind of conclusions around this, it's a very exciting times. Like esports, it's booming and it's growing very, very fast. And the opportunities to not only improve the spectating experience, but also improve how people perceive those, it's very cool. And there is a big opportunity for analytics tracking, especially for team performance, for meta-analysis, and for esports betting, which is a topic that has been around very, very strong lately, right? A lot of regulations are being passed, for instance, in the United States for sports betting, and esports betting is inside there. So you can see casinos starting to get into more in that business, and for those systems to have a very good backend, like people who do sports betting, they analyze a lot of information. And we can see that from very traditional sports like baseball and some others, where like the notebooks and how people were teams were performing is very important information for people to start doing betting, right? Now for that, and you can see, we need games and studio supports. Most of the games that you see right now that they have a more formal and a more mature infrastructure, like League of Legends and Dota and Counter-Strike, they provide official APIs that you can plug in and scrap data without having to do a lot of like hacking, let's say, in the middle. And then more important is that we see an evolution on the production of these events, where new roles, like we like to call master of ceremony or interactive entertainment directors, that is not only people coordinating how cameras look and what angles are doing, but they need to start coordinating these engagement experiences. So what are the questions that are we going to ask? Where are the moments that we are going to send them? And how are we going to process that data? So again, very exciting times and a lot of potential for growth and a lot of potential to improve and work on these kind of technologies. So questions?
Questions? I'm ask you first.
Sure.
Can you tell about one or two cases how your analytics help pro gamers?
So yeah, definitely. Analytics helps pro gamers, and if you guys can remember some examples of OpenAI, the Elon Musk company, and how they beat, let's say, pro players, the first feedback that the pro players said is that we can learn a lot from that. And because there's a lot of information that is very difficult to process in a human real-time way, most of the pro teams, they play scrims and they record their matches, and they're able to see the matches, like let's say like a Fortnite or PUBG, but they still lack that set like heat maps or encounter maps or like different kind of reports and analytics that they can use to improve. So they are manually tracking some of those. So in the case of League of Legends, they keep track of the most known heroes or the most champions, and what are the items they use, and what are the configurations, like the skill trees that are more popular among two different champions, for instance. So they are definitely investing more and more in these platforms because they know that it's essentially a data-driven. And again, we have a very big opportunity to automate a lot of that because games are already in a virtual environment. So it's just a matter of capturing that data and being able to showcase properly.